everybody. Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to TCR Trinity Competitive Racing.
Well, TCR TJ is the Season 13 Golden Class Champion for Trinity Competitive Racing.
Oh, let's go, dude! Yes!
Jabbar on the podium! He's on it by a 10! Gentlemen, side by side through one. And Silent, and Seafreeze gets a half spin. Let's fucking go! Wheel bumping.
DRS enable, let's do it.
And Captain Blade battling it out for position. Captain Blade.
Ickle, what the?
Then McChicken goes around and he also makes
rewind down the front straight. Oh my god.
I gotta check the heart rate.
Why do we do this? Because of nights like this.
Yo, welcome everybody to TCR Trinity Competitive Racing, and welcome to episode number 42 of the Racing Debrief, TCR's podcast where we combine the world of e-racing, sim racing, and TCR with real-life motorsports and Formula One. A true racing enthusiast, listen. We are back once again. The host, as usual, myself, Seafreeze, alongside my co-host of Mr. Camden Luca. Welcome back for another week of the Racing Debrief. Welcome.
Good to be back, Seafreeze. I think you're looking for redemption for the games on today's podcast because
really,
Have you seen the comment section on one of the shorts?
You know what? I started a little bit, and then I'm thinking, you know what? Maybe I should stop. But to say that I got totally blown out of the water is one thing. It's just one. It's just one of many. I'm back today. I got some good games. That's later on in the podcast, and I'm coming back for redemption. And I'm so happy everyone enjoyed some of the shorts that we were bringing. That's kind of something new we're bringing towards the YouTube channel and into all of our socials. So I had a lot of fun the last time we did it, and we have some more later on in the episode. So I'm bringing my A game today. Let's just say, Camden.
You better. I remember in one of the shorts. The short ended with you saying, "Oh, this wasn't that bad of a list." Then everyone in the comments was like, "Uno reverse card. We don't think so."
Yeah, you know what? I don't think it was that bad. It was just the Rosberg placement. But you know what? I thought you were going to give me a list of very bad drivers, and you went the opposite way. So you know what? You win some, you lose some. At the end of the day, I might have lost one.
Yeah, you might have.
But I think we got some more coming out on shorts, or they might already be out, and we got some more today. So let the games begin.
Yes, sir.
I just wanted to start off a little bit from what we were talking about in the last episode. I know it's been maybe 2 or 3 weeks since we dropped, which is kind of, I guess, a good timeline. Every now and then we'll put one out. Maybe not weekly, maybe depending on our schedules and depending on what topics we might want to discuss. But if anyone has any ideas or wants to jump on a podcast, just let us know, and we'll be happy to see what we got for an EP. But I wanted to kind of piggyback off last episode off of kind of the decline of the F1 games, the state of the EA games, and the Codemasters decline of users on the game. I want to give a little credit. I think it was B-Tom in the TCR Discord that put this graphic out. I want to see if I can maybe put it on screen for you all. Alright, so yeah, I wanted to kind of piggyback off last episode and show kind of the game units sold on the F1 games here, and it's been a consistent decline ever since from 2020 to 2021. And when I looked at this, now I don't know how accurate this is. I don't know if this is coming from Steam. It looks like it could be. I'm not sure what the source is, but it seems accurate in my opinion. I'd have to look into it and see where it actually is coming from. But ever since 2020, which was the peak, right? That was in the COVID pandemic era of pretty much gaming in general, right? I mean, gaming was a huge spike around then. A lot of people were home. You had a lot of people, more users on the game because everyone was home or forced to be inside. And 2020 is 1.2 million, is that? Or 3.2? I can't read it. 1.2. So 1.2 million now, all the way down to 127,000. So I mean, it's like 1/10 pretty much of the game, of the people who were on the game. And it makes sense because I mean, the amount of leagues that have shut down, downsized, even the grid sizes on leagues that are still going, it's just they can't even get 20 drivers. For I mean, we've been struggling, other leagues have been struggling. I know a lot of leagues have shut down, a lot of leagues have downsized, and I mean, it's just because of this. And I think it's just been the last few games, quality has been going down, and this graph just kind of proves that, yeah, not as many people are playing the games. The only thing I will say is I wonder how next game will be, because in 2024 we're actually having a great F1 season, and I think that motivates a lot of people to get the games, because 2021 was the season with Hamilton and Verstappen, obviously, and it still pulled a great amount of numbers, although I don't think 21 was as good of a game as 20. But then 22 and 23 dropped, and I could think that could be because the championship in real F1 wasn't close. It was really just Max Verstappen. And you can say, oh, what happened to F1 24? Well, at the beginning was pretty much all Max Verstappen for the first half of the season. Now it's turned into like, whoa, McLaren's leading the constructors, Norris is, however much behind Verstappen. And I think that could carry a lot of momentum. Depending on how this season ends in real life for Formula 1, next game, depending on the features, obviously, it could see a little bit of an up spike, because this is the lowest that I've seen in quite some time. So I just thought I'd share the graphic. I want to hear what, obviously, Camden thinks, but all of you guys watching as well. What do you think of the state of the F1 game? Especially that we have, some numbers to back it up off our last episode.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack right here. First of all, I want to highlight the peak, which, like you said, was F1 2020. If you look at the bar graph right there, I just want to remind everybody that at that time, Lewis Hamilton was winning his 4th championship in a row, and Mercedes as a whole was far and away the best team in the sport. So I don't know if it necessarily has to do with the dominance necessarily of a specific driver or a team, especially because, I mean, Max and Red Bull have always been more popular than Lewis and Mercedes ever was. So I don't know if that's necessarily a direct correlation. I think it really comes down to two things: multiplayer and the COVID hangover. I've been talking about this COVID hangover for a while. I think that's been, at the end of the day, what's really hurt the F1 games the most, and gaming in general. Because, I mean, if you really want to look at the bar graph, COVID ended around 2022, and that's where the stats really start to go down. You see F1 22 has less than 1 million sold, and then it just goes down from there.
Yeah.
When it comes to multiplayer, I think Codemasters and EA, I think they really underestimate just how much these games rely on leagues and multiplayer. Because, I mean, you have a lot of people that go on and just do the career mode, or they do, the F1 world stuff. But I really think people go on these games because they want to go and compete. They want that real competition, because the AI will never really do justice, right? Like, I mean, you could bump it up to 105 on the AI level and you might get competitive, but they don't actually race. When you go up against the AI, they kind of just sit there on track and they go at their own pace. When you're going up against real people, I mean, you're really getting to test your own pace. So I think that's just what EA and Codemasters has underestimated. And honestly, I think it's kind of disrespectful, the fact that they've put out games, the last couple of games specifically, that the majority of people really don't approve of. I mean, you see it with F1 24. Like, I hate to be a a negative, what right now, but that's just the truth. Everyone is just not happy with the game. It's just a shame.
Now I will say this. I think when you mentioned, Hamilton was winning in 2020, that might not have something to do with it. Although, Hamilton didn't win as many races as Max did, percentage-wise, in, I think that was his 22 season, right? Or was it 23? I mean, they both were.
23, Verstappen was unreal. Almost every single race.
Yeah. I mean, Hamilton obviously was dominant in 2020. I mean, there was some races where, he didn't obviously, win, and there was some other good races from that season. 23 and 22, I mean, there's just a small few. I mean, most of it went to Max. So maybe that doesn't have a lot to do with it. I think it does add a little bit to it. But then again, like you said, the game quality has gone down significantly. I'd like to see actually if what the units were sold from probably 2015 to 2019, because that's kind of when I started on the F1 games, and I'd like to see what 2015 and 2016 numbers brought in, and maybe we'll have that by next episode, because I remember there weren't that many leagues back then in 2015, 2016. I mean, it's probably almost comparable to now. So I wonder if we're lower than where we were about 10 years ago, or are we still ahead of the 2015-2016 numbers? Because I think if you look from 2015 and 19, those games, I think each year it got progressively better and better. And I think 2019 was probably my favorite game. 2020 was good as well. You had some, classic cars back then, some other tracks that maybe were more preferable. I just think every game from like 15 to 20 got an improvement of some sort. And I think the last few years it's just been a copy-paste, very generic of the same game over and over again. So yeah, I wonder where we are from today's game to back in 15 and 16 and all those other games, because this is my first game that I didn't get. So I am actually one of those people who got F1 23, one of the 500,000, and I didn't pick up the 24 game. So I am one that, the first time since 2015 I didn't get an F1 game. Will I get it eventually? I don't know if there's really a need for me to do it at this point, but yeah, it's really shocking. So hopefully, we keep saying it, brighter days ahead, but I mean, I think we've been saying that since 2020, right? Since 2021, and then the next thing, I hope it gets better, and then it goes down. I hope it gets better, it goes down. So, like, at what point does it become even profitable for EA? Because if you're only selling that amount of copies, I don't know if this is just for Steam or if this is on all platforms. I'm gonna have to do some more research to see, because I'm actually genuinely curious. Although we know from this, generally, it's been down ever since 2020. So good stuff there. I don't know if you have any final thoughts on it, but yeah.
I just want to just bring up a couple of things. So yeah, I bet EA has definitely had some meetings. I mean, they have to be aware of what people are saying and the amount of units that they've sold and what they haven't sold in the last couple of years. I mean, they have to be talking about that and starting to take this seriously. But I mean, knowing EA, the way they copy and paste the Madden games, and it's just, I don't know, we'll see. But I just want to go over some of the most popular live streams on the TCR YouTube channel, because we talk about 2020 being the peak. Actually, though, if you look at the YouTube, the 6 most popular races we've ever had were all on F1 2021. So 2021, I remember back in season 13, I mean, we easily had full grids for all 3 tiers. Even season 14, on our first F1 22 season, I remember people were still showing up. So I think it was really after 2021 where things started to go down.
Yeah, once they brought all that F1 life and the supercars, I think everybody just why. And another thing is, you had classic cars in the game. That's something I actually really enjoyed.
Me too.
It's good. It's good for all-star races. It's good for exhibition races. It's good for having fun when you're doing 5-lappers with the boys, and and then all of a sudden you want to switch it up. Oh, let's do this. Let's do that. I mean, right now we have the F2 cars, but I mean, if you can get a whole load of the classic cars or classic tracks, I think that brings some nostalgia back for other fan groups. Those who were a little bit older and maybe raced some of those V8 cars, or back in even earlier the 90s, and can race those classic cars, or what if they want to race a nice classic track that they could put on the game. I just don't know why you wouldn't want to have more content. The supercars, the F1 Life, all that had to do with EA, and I think that kind of ruined it. And I think they realized it. I mean, they have to. And I don't know what's in store for next game, but I would love classic cars back. Ugh.
Me too. Oh my gosh. I mean, the amount of options that we would have, Seafreeze. I mean, we could literally say that the next game isn't much better than F124. We could literally have a season where we do a revolving door of
classic
cars.
Right.
Either classic cars, we could do a couple races with the traditional F1 cars, F2 cars. Wow, that's actually... You know how cool that would be if every week is like a revolving door of different cars?
Yeah, I mean,
that would really test the skill level right there.
And hey, add on top of it, you could do a wild card random tracks and random cars every week if you wanted to.
Ooh,
and no repeat back to back. So if you randomize an F1 car, all right, next week it's not F1, or you race Spa one week, all right, next week it's like once you race it, you can't race it for either the rest of the season, or it can't be back to back, or for however many races. But I mean, that's a fun series you can run on top of the competitive series of the regular F1.
You know what I just remembered? You remember the short tracks?
Short tracks. I love the short tracks. Yeah, I love them.
Yeah, the short Bahrain circuit and the
short
short
Britain,
circuit. Bring those
short
back.
Japan. Yeah. And you know what? There's other variations of tracks. Like you look at Spain. All right, we don't love the Spain with the chicane, but might as well add it on the game, right? Might as well add the different variations of certain tracks. Even if we don't use it, I mean, use the more popular ones and put them in. Keep them there. There's no reason to get rid of content. There's really no reason to, and I don't know. It just bugs me.
It's lazy. That's what it is. It's the thing. Yeah, I mean, think about it. Like that's their job. Right?
Yeah.
So it's terrible to say that, but like literally, if it makes their job easier, then
either that, it comes down to licensing too, and a bunch of other things, right. I'm sure, but at the end of the day, there was a huge hit. I remember when they got added to the game and everyone was running them, and I mean that '06 Renault, woo,
gosh,
woo,
yeah, those V8 engines, V10 engines,
yeah,
bring those
good.
back.
Yeah, a couple older Ferraris, championship winning Ferraris, the older McLarens, the Williams. Now we're talking, Camden.
Now we're talking. We could do a whole league just for classic cars, and it would be a success.
Yeah. Well, anywho, well, that's that with the F1 game. We'll see how that goes. But yeah, next week hopefully I'll get some more numbers, stats wise, from 15 to 19, and we can dive more into it. This could be an ongoing. It's almost a weekly discussion at this point. We'll just keep bringing it back. Some big news broke out last week at Singapore. Daniel Ricciardo. There's a lot of speculation that was going to be his last race, that he was going to get pulled from. I don't even know what the team's called now. The V-Carb Racing Red Bulls. I don't know what it is.
the V-Carb.
So Ricciardo he's satisfied his diet and workout plan with V-Carb, because that's what it sounds like to me.
Yeah.
It sounds like a dieting thing, if anything. And yeah, he got pulled. He kind of knew it was his last. He didn't say anything, but he knew that was going to be it. And he got pulled from it. I guess it makes sense for them if if they know they're not going to keep him for next season, you might as well put in the person you are to get some reps in the car. And, you know, it really begs the question, is this the end of Daniel Ricciardo's F1 career? Or will he be back at some capacity next season? At what capacity? Or, you know, down the line? Will he take another year off and come back? I'm not sure. I don't think it's the end of his career, personally. I think there's seats there. There's opportunities that are going to open. I mean, if Hulkenberg came back, if Kevin Magnussen came back, you know, when they left and they came back, I think absolutely Ricciardo would have opportunities. Maybe not right now and next season. I just kind of find it hard to believe that it could be it for Ricciardo. I just don't think it is yet. I don't think that was his last F1 race.
I'm going to say something that people don't want to hear, but they have to hear. And I might ruffle a few feathers here, but...
We might disagree heavy on this. Go ahead.
Yeah, we're going to agree to disagree, Seafreeze. I think I've got quite a different take. This is karma to the extreme for Daniel Ricciardo. Hate to say it, this is what happens when you bet on yourself. And I'm going to go all the way back to 2018, all right? Daniel Ricciardo is on Red Bull at the time, winning races. He wasn't on a Mercedes team, and you could argue that Ferrari might have had the upper hand on Red Bull, but Ferrari and Red Bull were pretty close at the time. You know, Vettel was competing for drivers' championships, but as a whole, Daniel Ricciardo was on maybe the second best team in the sport at the time, winning races. However, he had Max Verstappen as his teammate, and it was getting pretty clear that Verstappen was getting favored over Daniel Ricciardo. So, instead of swallowing his pride, he took a chance on himself and went to Renault. And at the time, I remember there were some people saying, oh, this could be a good development thing, you know, he could grow the team, they could go somewhere, but it was seen as a risk. A lot of people were saying, should he just have stayed at the team where he was having success, or is this the right move? Well, it turns out Daniel Ricciardo proceeded to win 0 races at Renault, and then he winds up at McLaren, where, in my opinion, might be a hot take, he wins 1 fluke race because Lewis Hamilton and Max Verstappen were trying to kill each other all year that year. And then he gets sacked from McLaren because Lando Norris outperformed him all of 2022. That's just a fact. That's just what happened. So then he gets sacked from McLaren. He's out of the sport for half a year. And out of all the teams in the sport that brings him back into the sport, it's RB. It's the junior team this time, where he proceeds to get hurt and then gets outperformed by Yuki Tsunoda. The team that he abandoned ends up being the one that ends his career. That's just how I see it.
Wow. I mean, that's a good synopsis. Yeah, I mean, I could see that. I mean, I think it is tough. I just don't personally see how you can leave a top team. You know, it's so hard in itself to get to Formula One, and it's so hard to get to a championship winning, or maybe obviously Red Bull weren't championship winning when he was there. He was still race winning in a race winning car, podium winning, podium contention car. I mean, Red Bull, Mercedes, Ferrari were the big 3 for how many seasons? I mean, is this the first season that McLaren have, they broken into the top 3? Other than that, it's always been the top 3. It's been Mercedes, Ferrari, Red Bull, apart from that Ferrari down year in 2020? 21?
Yeah.
But anywho, I think that I just don't see how you can lose for the seat. You know, I would never picture or imagine leaving a team when you're at the top. You know, winning those races. I just can't picture that. And he did because of Verstappen. But I just don't know. Obviously it wasn't the right move. I would have loved to see how Ricciardo was when he was still at Red Bull. Yeah, I just don't see how you can leave a team where you're at the front of the grid. I mean, going to Renault. I mean, it's kind of funny now because all the problems Renault has had with drivers leaving, staff leaving. It's just been a mess over there, and it was a big risk to go to Renault. And obviously, the chances of that succeeding were slim to none, in my opinion. I mean, it looked maybe somewhat good on paper, but I mean, come on, that wasn't going to happen. Big risk, didn't work out. He did give Renault their first podium since returning to the sport, so that was a highlight. And you mentioned when he goes to McLaren, he grabs that, maybe you want to say fluke win or not. I wouldn't say it's a fluke win per se, because he was up at the front of the grid. Hamilton and Verstappen had that issue where they collided in turn 1 and 2, and they got out of the race. But the McLarens were quick that race. I mean, they were up towards the front. I don't know how it would have ended if obviously them two didn't crash, but still got McLaren their first win since however many years. Obviously inconsistent at times, pretty much since he left Red Bull. And even at AlphaTauri and VCAR, Tsunoda, who's not like the best driver, was outperforming Ricciardo. I think a lot of it has to do with mental preparedness for him, and that's really for all F1 drivers. You have to be comfortable, and I think he was, when he was at Red Bull, he was thriving, and the minute Max started to get favored, he knew he had to get out of there. And if that's, I think he put a post out on Instagram saying, he doesn't really regret anything. It was his journey. Yeah, I mean, that's good for him. If he's good with his career, then he's good with it. But personally, I think he should have never left Red Bull. Just similarly as to how Bottas was at Mercedes. Obviously, he was getting outperformed by Hamilton all those years. Grabbed some wins, grabbed some podiums. He didn't leave the team to risk his career for stats to go to a team that, let's see if it works out. No, he stayed at Mercedes until they said, all right, we're not signing you again. Right? And then now he's where he is now. I think you can say the same for Perez. He's at Red Bull. He's not going to leave the team to go to another team. Bottas and Perez, they understand their role. Now, they might not like it, but I'd much rather be in that car than going the route, being in a midfield team, or even a backmarker team, and giving up chances for wins and podiums. I mean, if he really wanted to bet on himself, because I think that's a little BS. Why would Danny Ricciardo bet on himself and go to Renault or McLaren? If you really want to bet on yourself, you stay at Red Bull and you beat Max.
Yeah.
So he didn't bet on himself. He left the team because he's a little, what? That's why. I mean, at least Bottas and Perez can stand there and say, yeah, I'm a number 2 driver. But hey, they're getting podiums. They're getting a couple wins every now and then. They are a Constructors' champion. What did Ricciardo? No, Max is favorite. I'm going to leave now. No, that's not. If you're a Formula 1 driver, you go up against the best drivers and the best team. End of story. And Ricciardo didn't do that. And I don't think he's capable of doing that. Because he left Red Bull because of Max. And, he didn't like how Renault was going. He went to McLaren. And he didn't even get a shot at McLaren. Because McLaren's like, you know what? Nah, we don't want you. You got outperformed. We're getting in Piastri. And then at the end, it was just like Ricciardo at the corner store, begging to get back in. And yeah, you're right. His old team, picked him up, said, we'll give you another shot. And then they beat him down again. And they said, all right, we're gone. We used you when we could. now you're no longer valuable to us, and they've thrown him out. And
You know,
that's just the reality of it.
what I will say real quick, if there's any reason that he left Red Bull that's valid, you got to wonder what's going on with Perez right now. I don't know if you saw his Twitter, but he basically put out a video stomping down those retirement rumors, saying, you know, I'm not going anywhere. You're going to have to deal with me in the future. But you see how he's been performing as of late. And here's the thing. I don't understand how someone as a driver, for his age, I mean, he's not an older driver, can fall off so quickly. Considering how Max has been so dominant the last year or so, you just gotta wonder if Ricciardo kind of saw the writing on the wall on how he was gonna get out-favored to the extreme. If you know, I mean, we don't know what happens behind closed doors, but you never know if Ricciardo saw some sort of writing on the wall being like, nope, this is BS. I got to get out of here, or else this is going to destroy my mental health.
That's exactly what happened. That is exactly what happened. He knew he had to get out because of that, and he even took a year off after McLaren, or half a year, whatever.
Right. But if I want to just say some nice things about Daniel Ricciardo, because I feel like we've kind of been throwing him under the bus here. As Formula One fans, we are in debt without his presence.
Yeah,
he is one of the best personalities in the garage. Great character, you know, great smile. Like he's genuinely a good dude, and it sucks to, like, that interview with him after the Singapore Grand Prix. Like that got me emotional, honestly. Watching him basically be a emotional wreck. Like you could tell, like he knew this was it, and that's that's got to be a surreal feeling, because he was talking about how, like, you know, the cockpit is something he's been familiar with for pretty much his whole life. You know, as an F1 driver, you bust your tail to get to the top. And I remember we were talking one episode, Seafreeze, about the egos that these guys have.
Yeah.
Because you got to have an ego to be one of the 20 best drivers in the world, to get up to where you are.
Does he have
and I think
one,
his ego got the best of him when he left Red Bull.
I don't really think he really has an ego, to be honest. I think because of how like smiling and good-spirited he is, I think he can get a weird perception because of it. Almost, because he's almost too nice. Obviously, when he's in a cockpit, he's doing his job, and he's there fighting for wins and fighting that driver spirit, driver mentality. But yeah, I'm not sure. But I mean, I'll say this. I mean, along when Vettel was still racing, he was my favorite. Ricciardo was right there with him. Those are my favorite two ever since watching F1, and to not have Ricciardo on the grid. I mean, he's been on the grid obviously at these other teams, but ever since he left Red Bull, it's been, I guess, a down tick, because we want to see him at the front. I mean, we saw, 8-time race winner, all those great overtake moves, the shoeies on the podium, which was a lot of fun to see. That's what I like. And when he's in a top team, you get to see more interviews, more this, more that. And to be honest, I don't know if it's the end for him, because I don't know how old he is. I don't know if you could check that. Because
I think he's 34. Let me double check.
And also check Perez as well, because I want to see how I think he's I want to see him as well.
Ricciardo is 35 and Perez is 34.
Yeah, so Perez is younger than Ricciardo. Yeah, I don't know if he'll ever get a chance at the top again because of the age. I mean, Alonso is, but Alonso's a different creature. I think he can maybe take, maybe next season off, or I don't know if there's even any seats or reserve spots available. I mean, I don't know what's going to happen, but you never know what it's going to look like down the line. And if he wanted to, if something opens up in a year or two, I could see him coming back in a good opportunity. I mean, we'll see what the landscape of the grid looks like. But for the time being, it is the end. But I don't know if he's ready. That's the thing. Even if it's a lower backmarker team, if the driver wants to race, he's gonna race. So
yeah,
we'll see how it looks. But if this truly is the end, I mean, it's been a great career for him, and a lot of highlights, a lot of good moments, and I'd be sad if that is truly the end. I think it was a pretty bad way of how it did end, just out of the blue. But we'll have to.
I mean, even with his history of like leaving Red Bull and then giving him another chance, it is a pretty shitty way of what they did to him. I mean, he basically found out the day before the Singapore Grand Prix that he was getting sacked. When I think there was a story that like Liam Lawson knew a couple weeks ahead of time that he was going to get the seat. There was some sort of inconsistency there. So yeah, I mean, there is some shady stuff that goes on at Red Bull. I mean, you've seen it with Christian Horner and really the whole Perez situation.
Yeah,
I really don't think he's a bad driver at all.
No, and even Perez. They're all really good drivers. That's why they're there. But I just think, I wonder if Ricciardo ever had an opportunity at a good environment team. And I say this because, all right, Red Bull sounds great on paper for junior drivers, only when it's your first time there. When it's your first time at, previously Toro Rosso, AlphaTauri, V-Carb now, it looks good. They put you on the junior team, you have good support. I mean, how many great drivers have Red Bull program brought into the sport? And you go to the junior team, you possibly get a chance at Red Bull. But at any slight hesitation, any slight downtick in performance, it's cutthroat. I mean, you see that with Gasly, Albon, Ricciardo. I mean, the list goes on and on. Kvyat, when he got pulled for Max going in. I mean, it's just that environment is not the best if you're not performing. And yeah, it looked great on the way up. But then once we've mentioned when Max got favorited, then it went downhill. Then he goes to Renault, and it's like, what? We look at how messy that's been. Was that really a great environment to be at Renault? I mean, weren't the change in engineers and the lead guy change, it's just kind of messy over there at Renault, and then Alpine, and then he goes to McLaren, where you can say is okay of a team, with Lando and Piastri there, but did he really get the best of a shot? It was a year or two, and like, I'm wondering, how would he be in a team where he feels welcomed? Because he hasn't had that since Red Bull. And I think if he can find a team and a support system, I think he could be successful again. But
what about Sauber? What if Bottas in the next year or two says,
Yeah.
you know what, I don't want to run 18th anymore, I'm done.
Right,
What if they bring in Ricciardo?
Yeah, I mean, Audi is very soon. Audi just bought 100% of Sauber. That's not something that's really gotten mentioned. Audi was going to slowly buy into Sauber and slowly ramp up their progression, but they went 100% in. I mean, Sauber's not going to be a thing anymore. It's going to be Audi. That could be a team there. I mean, what happens to the junior team at Red Bull? Do they get bought out? I mean, Haas. I mean, all these other things. I mean, how does the landscape look in a few years' time? We don't know. But also, you mentioned his age, the time's ticking. So we'll have to see how it is. But I think he really hasn't had a proper team with a good support system since Red Bull back in 2016. And then once Max got favorited, he never really had a good support system. And I think that's really the issue why he's been so inconsistent, because of that. Anywho, speaking of Max Verstappen and Red Bull, there was a little bit of drama in the post-race interview or at the press conference with Max Verstappen cursing, and I just kind of wanted to, I don't know, I had a couple thoughts on it, and I think it's quite simple because I think Max is a little wrong here, and I think a couple of F1 drivers are wrong here, because this is my take on it. When you're performing live in the cockpit and you have your radio on, this is during the action. I mean, this is when you're performing, and at that time, I don't care what you say. I mean, that F1 has an option whether to broadcast it or limit the cursing there, so they have no jurisdiction on that, in my opinion. When you're in the cockpit in practice, qualifying a race or post-race, pre-race, drivers say whatever they want. That, to me, is no problem. In post-race interviews, even, I can allow some cursing here or there because you're still in the heat of the moment. Post-race interview, post-qualifying. I mean, that's when the emotion, the adrenaline is still kicking in. I even think then it's fine to a degree. But in a post-race press conference, this is when all the drivers have cooled down, and you're taking press questions in a press conference. It's the most formal interview radio style is the press conference each week. At that point, to intentionally use cursing is really unprofessional, because this is the press, this is the news that's going out to all these media sections, and to say that Max is saying, oh yeah, the kids are going to learn eventually, why does it matter? But like, it's very unprofessional in a press conference setting to just be cursing while you're the top of the sport. I mean, a lot of people look up to Formula One drivers. In the race, in post-race interviews, I can give it a slide. I don't care about that, because they could always limit it. But when you're in a formal press conference for Formula One, representing your sponsors, your team, when you've cooled down, you don't have adrenaline running in a press conference. You might be mad or about something still, or salty about it, but your adrenaline isn't pumping. There's no need to have cursing in it, and I think it's right if Formula One and FIA, if they want to mandate that you can't curse in the press conference, and they should get penalties for that, because again, that's representing the sport, your team, your sponsors, and in that setting, I think it's just a little unprofessional. I don't know what you think about it, but I just thought I'd give you my opinions on it this week.
Yeah, well, first of all, I agree with everything you said. It's almost becoming normalized for not just F1 drivers, but just in general. I mean, you go on social media, you look at live sports. I mean, swearing's just become a common thing. And, I think a lot of us, especially, people who aren't kids or parents, like people like us, like we'll laugh at that, or we'll be shocked, like, oh, wow, like you can't do that on live TV. But I think I just need to remind people why swearing on TV has been condemned for forever, really. If kids are hearing that on TV and say they get, influenced by that, and they go into school the next day and start swearing, and the teacher asks them, little Timmy, where did you learn to say that word?
Oh, little Timmy.
I heard it. I heard Max Verstappen say that on TV. Then you have a bigger issue, because then Formula One is going to hear those complaints, and it's a whole shitstorm of stuff. So yeah, I think that's just a kind of an analysis of why it's not allowed or shouldn't be allowed on TV. But I still think, like I said, with social media and everything, I think it's just going to become normalized. Give it a few years down the road, it's just going to become normalized. Podcasts too. I mean, I think a lot of kids are watching podcasts nowadays, although podcasts are more so for either teenagers or adults, really, because podcasts are real conversational form. But there's no doubt that kids are seeing podcasts because podcasts are everywhere. And the way that kids are having phones at 9, 10, 11...
Oh, even earlier, way earlier.
Even earlier. Isn't that terrifying?
Yeah.
Forget the swearing aspect of it. I mean, if we want to, this could be for another day, but the fact that they're exposed to the social media algorithm, some of the stuff you see on Instagram Reels, like that terrifies me. The fact that kids that young can see content like that. So I think it's going to become normalized, unfortunately.
Yeah, although, you know what? I think the best route of action for Formula One is this. Just set the precedent. Why create that disconnect between Formula One and the F1 drivers and the teams? By Verstappen curses in a post-race interview, and then you give him a penalty, and then the rest of the press conference or the rest of the week, he doesn't say anything in your interviews. Why would you want that, right? Because then, well, maybe that is a good thing. Any publicity is good publicity, is what they say. You're getting more eyes to your product. But is that really what we want to be talking about, is cursing it with drivers and press conference? F1, if they really don't want that happening, they just should talk to the drivers and say, hey, in press conferences, we need the language to be this. This is what we expect. You're the top drivers in the league. We're the top. Formula One is the premier class, the top of the top. The best teams, the best drivers, the best sponsors. It's the money sport for motorsport. I mean, the best of the best is there. There should be an elegance in a class of respect and professionalism. If you're going to bring all the best of the best, you should bring your best attitude, your best professionalism, your best manner to a press conference in the most formal setting there is. And I think F1 just needs to set that and just tell them that before they give the penalty, and then you create this disconnect, because then, it's just not needed. So a little bit better communication on the F1 side of it would have been ideal, and then, tell the drivers what you want, but don't just tell them by giving penalties out. I mean, you have to talk to them first to say, oh, this is what's allowed and not allowed. And then I think everything will be fine. But I don't really think it's a huge deal. At the end of the day, they could just bleep it out. I mean, if it's going to get published. I mean, if it's live, that's one thing. And if it happened once, it's one thing. Or if it's an accident, that's one thing. But if the drivers are intentionally cursing when they know they could ease that up, that's just unprofessional. And you know what? Out of everyone that this would have happened to, I mean, Max. I mean, come on. Max really doesn't give anything. He doesn't care about anything. He's going to do what he does at the end of the day. And that's just how he is. But I think it's just for a Formula One champion to, to act that way. I mean, there's been so many times he's just been acting out of manner. And, I mean, others as well, and not just him. But since we're talking about him in this time, it does make sense it was him that got the penalty or got reprimanded for it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, just one last thing. I mean, I've been saying this for a little while now. I really think F1 is becoming like NASCAR. I mean, there's other reasons besides this one, but if you want to focus on this one...
is that the next podcast?
It could be the next podcast.
Oh, let us know down below.
NASCAR has always, for the longest time, been about, ruffling feathers and getting into fights after the race and tempers. And while tempers have been a thing in Formula One, I mean, I can flash back to Schumacher when he wasn't it after Belgium that one year where he stormed into someone's garage after he got crashed out or whatever? But F1 has always been about class. That's what separates it from NASCAR and a lot of these other motorsports. It's for the longest time it was about, oh, you can't make contact, oh, you got to be composed after the race. And now you're having rivalries like Max and Lewis, and you're having swearing after the race, and you're having red flags with 2 laps to go. I'm telling you, soon we're going to be getting stages, and we're going to be getting
imagine F1 stages and F1 playoffs. Oh my gosh.
I'm getting flashbacks. Traumatic flashbacks.
Yeah. Well, anywho, that was a good segment there. Let's have some fun, shall we? Let's do some game time.
Game time.
Yes, sir. All right, so this week's for the games, which we'll have in the podcast as always, and then hopefully we'll have some shorts at some point. But this week is, well, how about you, Cameron? Since it was your idea this week, you take the reins.
So this week we will be doing this or that, and it's basically a form of would you rather have this or that. So we will discuss a couple of F1 scenarios, if you would prefer this scenario or that scenario, and we're both going to answer. We're going to do several rounds of this,
yes, sir.
And we're going to see what people prefer when it comes to F1 history, drivers, tracks. It could be whatever, really.
Yeah, and I guess you say at the beginning of the episode that I have to bring my A game. This one is a little bit more. There's really no correct answer, but I know for those who will be watching, they'll let us know who really got the
they will
the good answers or not.
They let you know loud and clear last time.
All right, so who wants to go first here?
I'll go first.
All right, go for it.
All right, this or that, Formula One edition. Would you rather have Alonso win another race or Lewis win an 8th championship?
I would say I'd like to see Alonso win another race. Because although the Hamilton championship would be obviously record-breaking, it's almost fitting that he's tied with Schumacher in some sense. And we've seen, obviously, 7 championship seasons from him. And I think now it's like, okay, we've seen that. We've seen Max. I think now we're looking more towards the newer drivers possibly getting championships. Although, if this championship obviously would come from Ferrari, that also would add to it, right? I mean, if he wins from the championship at Ferrari, that's one thing. But to see, I've never personally seen Alonso win a race from me watching Formula One. I didn't watch when he won his championships. I didn't even know what Formula One was at the time. Unfortunately, I didn't get to see him win those races. I've seen Lewis win championships, so I think it's more of a personal choice for me. I'd like to see Alonso win a race. I've never seen him win a race. I've seen Lewis win championships.
As a fan, I'm going to say Lewis.
Yeah.
But in general, I'm also going to say Lewis because I think there's a lot of redemption on the table from the whole Abu Dhabi fiasco. I think he should have gotten his 8th championship there.
Right.
But you mentioned it with Ferrari on how if he goes and wins an 8th championship at Ferrari, that's going to be historic on so many different levels. He'll break the record with Schumacher at the team that Schumacher won 5 of his championships at. I just think there's so much history. I mean, forget who's behind the wheel necessarily. I think the historical implications of someone getting an 8th championship at Ferrari might be the greatest moment in Formula One history.
Yeah, it would be cool if he did win a Ferrari. I'm not saying no. I mean, I just had to pick one, right? Don't come at me, all right? All right. That's a good one there. This one's more general. Would you rather have a perfect pit crew, but bad tire strategy, or perfect tire strategy, but a slow pit stops every time?
I am going to say perfect strategy.
So you'd
Because
rather have a
strategy
perfect.
tends to get in the way more than bad pit stops.
Yeah. You know what?
Simple as that.
I think I'd agree with you. I think, especially if you have a good car and a good gap, you can get away with a slow pit stop, as long as you have a good tire strategy and a fast car. That's probably that's what I would go with as well.
Yeah, especially if you undercut someone, or even like if you overcut.
Yeah.
You know, so if you have a bad pit stop, and bad pit stops in Formula One are 3 seconds, right? 3 seconds, 4 seconds.
Well, I don't know. I mean, but slow pits. I mean, a bad slow pit stop. I mean, it could be
What, like a 10-second pit stop?
yeah, maybe more like maybe a 5 second. Maybe longer.
Yeah. Even then, like if you absolutely nail the strategy, you'll still be competing for the position that you had before the pit stop.
Yeah, I agree.
All right. Next up, this or that. Ricciardo keeps his seat, or Kimi Räikkönen returns to Formula One.
Ooh, and you're saying keeps his seat at the current team,
Correct.
and Kimi Räikkönen returns to F1, but we don't know where.
Or yes.
Okay. I think it'd be fun to see Kimi back, but depending on, I don't want to see Kimi back and go to a back marker. Like I don't think that's fun. I would say keep Ricciardo at his seat, because if he kept his seat, it means he'd probably have more of an opportunity down the line, and he's got more years in his career. If Kimi comes back, it's for a year or two, and at what capacity and what team. I didn't really enjoy his time at Alfa Romeo. You're right. I mean, he was at the back. I mean, it wasn't really that memorable. But if he's coming back to a top team like Ferrari, I mean, then I love that every day. But I think I'd like to see Daniel Ricciardo stay. Obviously, yeah.
I'm going to agree with you. I think this is a close pick for me, but the way that I see it is the difference between the two of them, Daniel Ricciardo and Kimi Räikkönen. Ricciardo actually cares about being in Formula One right now.
Right. Yeah.
While Kimi Räikkönen views it as a hobby.
Yeah,
So
and he didn't really care the many years at the end of his career anyway. So yeah, you're right.
Yeah, so I'll go Ricciardo for this one. Even though we were just saying how, it's karma that he's out of the sport. No, I mean, we all want to see Ricciardo and Räikkönen, for that matter, both in Formula One.
Yeah. All right. This or that, would you rather be coached by Fernando Alonso or Sebastian Vettel?
Man, that's difficult. When you think about the two of them, I feel like their personalities are very different. You got Alonso, who's more of a fiery character, while Vettel's more of a softer character, nicer character, probably going to be more encouraging. You also have to think, too, are we talking right now? Because right now, one of them is still in the sport.
Right. I would say, you know what, I think for the question, I'd say now. I mean, right now. I mean, we're not talking 20 years ago, right? I mean, we're talking, like, if you were to do it right now, who would you want to be coached by?
You know what? I'm actually going to say Alonso, because Alonso has been on a plethora of teams. He's been through the ringer. He knows what it's like to win championships and then have a long losing streak. So I think there's a lot of valuable insight that Alonso can provide that Vettel hasn't necessarily gone through.
That's fair. I'm going to go, it's biased, of course, Sebastian Vettel. I'd love to be coached by him. That'd be really cool. But I also think, 4-time champion, I think he's very detailed. I'm not saying Alonso's not. You bring up a great point. He's been in a lot of teams. He's been through a lot of different scenarios. I just think, for me, I think I'm more of a similar driver to Vettel. I think the way of which he does things, I kind of lean towards. And even though he's not a current F1 driver, I think he's been recent enough, right, in the last few years, to where I would love to have him as a coach.
Okay. Now that I'm curious as to what you're going to say for this, because this could leave you thinking for a little bit.
Oof.
This or that? Would you rather bring back the V10 engines for 1 year, or bring back Sebastian Vettel on a good team?
Oof. Oh wow.
I got you there.
To be honest, I mean, if it's, yeah, I mean, I would love to see Vettel back in the sport on a good team, and I think the sport would love that as well, especially if you have Max, Alonso, Hamilton, like it. I mean, all these champions. I mean, oh, you start drooling over it, right?
Yeah.
I would love that, but the V10s, I mean, I'd say. You know what? I'm going to go with this. I'm actually going to say Vettel to come back in a top team, because if you bring V10s back for 1 year, I just think it's, obviously I'd love that, but I think it'd be just mixed signals for how F1 has, the direction on which they've been going for years on years on years, for them to just kind of go back. How would that hurt the teams that are currently there, right? Audi probably wouldn't be here. You know, like if let's say they come back for 2025, and maybe let's say it stays, right? What teams would leave the sport? What teams would come back? It's interesting.
I'm going to say the V10 engines, just because if you, and really this was more of a hypothetical of like, if you could bring back the V10 engines without consequences, right? Because we're bringing back Sebastian Vettel without really any consequences at all. I would say the V10 engines, I think everybody would be in an uproar for that. And it brings back a lot of nostalgia for some of the older fans as well.
Yeah. For me, totally favorited. I'd go with Vettel. Because you
knew
know
that
what?
would stump you.
You know what? That's because I would watch almost every race and like a lot more in detail if he would be on the grid. Because if you have one of your favorite drivers, someone you can really get behind and root for, I think it adds it. You know what? I would even probably come back league racing if he came back.
Wow.
Full time. I probably would. If he came back, I'd be full time racing.
Even on the F124 game?
Even on the F124 game.
Wow.
I've always been a proponent of, I don't care what game, what car, what track, what setup. You put me in it, and if it's in a competition style league racing setting, I'm gonna race it. I don't complain about what track I'm in. I don't complain about what car I'm in. We're giving it. I'm gonna be in the practice session like I do every week, or how I used to do it, and I would try to filter with the setup, do my practice runs, do my quali like any other week, and I wouldn't be complaining. If I'm gonna commit to a season, I'd be there, and that's just how it would be. So yeah, I would 100%.
All right. Well, Sebastian Vettel, if you're listening to this podcast,
Don't come back. Don't come back. I don't have the time. Please don't. All right. Mine. This or that. Would you rather win your first Grand Prix by 0.01 seconds, or dominate the race and win by 30 seconds?
Dominate the race. Not even close.
Really?
Dominate the race. I think it says a lot more about you as a driver if you go and absolutely whoop the field versus, oh, look at that. He barely won. It was a cool finish, but look at that. He barely was able to win. And what are the circumstances, too? Like, did I have a 30-second lead and then it came down to 0.001? I mean, that's just a lot more stress, right?
I'm gonna actually. I'm gonna actually go the opposite way. I'd rather win my first Grand Prix if it was in Formula One by 0.01 seconds, and here's why. They're gonna remember it, and they're gonna remember that first race, and it might even propel your career more because you're gonna get more eyes on it. Your first race, it's gonna be memorable. They're not gonna forget that first race that you won. And you look back at A lot of great finishes, or if you even look at like other sports like NASCAR, the close finishes of like Kevin Harvick's first when Atlanta, how close that was for him. All right, it was close race, but how memorable is that, right? That's great for his career. I would want the same thing. Now, if it's on a week-to-week basis, I'd much rather win by 30 seconds. I'd love to dominate a race. I don't care. I'd rather. It's fun to dominate. It's less stressful, and you get the win and the points. So all the other weeks after, I would have 30-second dominant wins. But my first one in Formula One, oh, that'd be cool to win that close and win it. Because I would not want to be the loser of a .01.
You know, I think we're thinking about this from opposite perspectives. I think you're viewing this from the outsider's perspective of what are they going to think of you. I'm thinking of myself. If I'm in the seat and if it's my first win and I win by 30 seconds, all right, I'm the best in the sport already. I don't have to sweat. I've got a lot of confidence going forward for the rest of the year. And I'm assuming if you win by 30 seconds, you're going to have some more good performances after that. Yeah, that's not even a question for me, honestly.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I don't really care what people think when it comes to that. Like, okay, you won in a close finish, cool. Next time, win by more. Win by 2 seconds. Then after that, win by 4. I don't really care about. I'd rather do the best I can on track. That's just me.
Fair. They'll forget about you then when you don't win.
Yeah, that's fine with me. I'll remember it. They may not. I'll remember it. I'll be like, yep, I was the guy. They sacked me from their team. I would have been the GOAT, but you know what? Whatever.
No, I want to be on
Get
highlights.
your TV ratings.
I want to be on recaps. I want to be on intros. I want to be the guy on all these interviews and TV medias because I won my first race by that much and it got X amount of millions and millions of views and all this left and right.
Hey, I'm going to be the guy that kills Formula One. I'm going to be so good that everyone stops watching. And I'll be like, yeah, I was so good that everyone just walked away. They didn't even want to deal with me.
Right, you won good. So good no one saw it.
I was having too much fun. Everyone just decided to leave.
Right. Oh, that's a good one though. All right. You got your last one? Let's see what we got.
I've already done my 3.
Oh,
I'm done.
Is that mine?
That was it. We're done.
Oh, all right. There you have it. Well, that's a great way to end. I was having so much fun, and man, I want another one.
We could do. Would you rather? No, I was gonna make a Seafreeze Camden comparison, but we know you're the 3-time platinum champion, so
yes, sir.
I'm setting myself up for failure. Anyways.
Oh, that was fun. Well, there you have a little bit of game time. It's been fun in that regard. A fun episode. I really enjoyed it, and hopefully everyone else did as well. Like I said, this episode will now be, as last episode was, it's going to be on YouTube under the podcast section. It's going to be on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, and hopefully we'll get some shorts out as well from that game segment, and we'll return for an episode every now and then. Let us know ideas. Let us know your thoughts. If you'd like to be featured on it, let us know that as well. We have our TCR F1 League, which will, the day of this getting post, would be later on tonight, Tuesdays, 8:45 p.m. Eastern Time. We'll be live on the YouTube and Twitch, so go check us out there. Follow us on all socials at Trinity Racing, and join the Discord server where we are the most active to get all up to date with TCR. You go to the website as well. You can sign up to race with us and get more information on TCR. Thanks again to my co-host Camden Luca for joining me on this fine episode, and thank you all for watching. Until next time, have a good day, everybody.